Hi ladies, it's Hillary, owner of Free Babes Handmade and blogger at I'mLikeBrave.com, a blog all about living an uncommon life that you love with your family through entrepreneurship. I personally love having one-on-one coffee dates with other entrepreneurs that I admire, and so I thought it'd be really fun to start a weekly series where I get to interview creative entrepreneurs and you get to listen in. From these interviews, you will learn from their successes and their failures, get behind the scenes access to see how they built their business, and you'll walk away with valuable insights that will help you take your business to the next level. So grab a cup of coffee and join the conversation. Enjoy! Hi ladies, it's Hillary, and I'm so excited to be here with Elise today. Elise you've probably seen her on different platforms on the internet because she has her hands in a little bit of everything. She started blogging about 10 years ago, then had a handmade creative shop. She podcasts and she has conversations with other creative entrepreneurs. And she also has Get to Work Book, which is a product company, and they make planners for, I think, the creative-minded entrepreneur, and they're great. So thanks for being with us today, Elise.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So before we start talking about business, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your story?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Elise. I live in San Diego with my husband, Paul, and we have two daughters, Ellery, who's going to be 3 in June, and Piper, who's about 6.5 months. And I have kind of been working for myself, trying to figure it all out for the past 10 years. I started my blog in college and have been doing little bits of things here and there. I ultimately kind of my Instagram handle is a maker, goal setter, and mama. So those are the 3 things that I would say define who I am right now.
Awesome. And what did you go to college for?
I was a business major and ended up with an emphasis in marketing. And I definitely thought I would do kind of the corporate track, and definitely ended up not doing that at all.
So can you tell us a little bit more about, from the time that you started your first blog, what the journey has looked like and which businesses you started when and kind of where you're landing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started my blog, blogging was nothing like it is now. People were sharing very personal. It was more like a journal. And that's how I treated it. And then I graduated college and I went to work at a paper store called Paper Source. And there I started to learn a lot more about crafting and about making things. And so I started my first Etsy shop, I think in 2007, 2008, and I sold handmade note card sets. And that was kind of the beginning of doing something. And then eventually I got a little bit more serious and I would have more organized product launches and product launches around a theme, and it kind of grew out of there. The second kind of tier was when I started selling rubber stamps. I was active in the scrapbooking industry, and so it was an easy transition to start selling these stamps, and that was kind of like my introduction to something a little bit bigger. And then when I turned 29 in 2014, I did a project called Make 29, and that was every month I released a new handmade product in editions of 29 or 290, and that was a big endeavor and something huge to take on, and so I kind of learned a lot about that, a lot about goal setting and a lot about time management and organization. And that's when the idea for Get to Work Book, which is a day planner plus goal setting workbook, that's when that idea came about. So I think those are kind of the 4 pinpoints. I blogged extremely actively for 10 years. And then last fall, right before Piper was born, I realized that I wasn't very passionate about it anymore. And so now I post on occasion, but definitely not as regular as I used to.
Awesome. So your business moves it seems like they're always guided by what gives you life and what you're passionate about at the moment.
Yeah.
And I love that. So can you tell us a little bit about what your big why is for why you have a business? The blog I'm Like Brave is all about women having businesses so they can live lives that they love. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I love that mission. I think what I like about working for myself is this idea that the harder I work, the more I benefit from the work. Versus when you work for a company, the harder you work, the more the company benefits, which isn't a bad thing. But I'm motivated by that kind of feedback, that feedback loop, I guess. And So right now, we're in an interesting position. My husband's in the military, and so we're not very flexible as far as like what our lifestyle can look like. We're pretty locked in, and he has a really tight schedule. But I love that my business, is something that the girls will see, and they'll grow up knowing that mom loves her job and she works hard at her job. And I like that I've worked hard enough to get to a place that I get to do the work that is interesting to me, and not the work that isn't interesting to me. So that feels like a cool reward after putting in the time.
Totally. So you get to literally just wake up and do things that you love every day.
Right. Like, yeah, it's like sometimes there's hard parts. Obviously, like I don't love shipping, but I love the book, and I love the brand behind it. And so all of that is part of it. And so that, yeah, it becomes, it feels like what I love because it's all supporting what I love, I guess. Yeah,
totally. So what has been your biggest learning lesson so far through the 10 years of kind of building different businesses? What's something specific that's happened that's really taught you to do things differently now, or?
Yeah, great question. So as a general overarching thing, I think what I've learned is you can only you can't make the perfect product for every single person, right? Whether you're just, whether you have a blog or you're selling a service or you're selling a physical product, there's no way you can make the right thing for everyone. And so that's been something that I just continue to learn every single time I launch something, or every single time I'm getting feedback, or, whatever. It's remembering that I can only do what is working for me, and then hopefully find the right audience for that. Doesn't make anyone right or wrong. It's just, that's how it is. That's been a good, important lesson that I always am learning. More of a physical thing, or more of a literal, point to it thing that I've learned from. When the first Get to Work book launched, the back cover was thin. It was one layer of chipboard instead of two like the front. And so that back cover was weak and broke and was falling off the books. And it sucked. It was hard for me. It was extremely frustrating for customers. And so what I ended up doing was making a stronger back cover for the next version, and then emailing those original purchased customers and sending them a new back to try to make it better. And then obviously continuing to improve on the book time after time. But I think the lesson from that was you can't not make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, but when you do make mistakes, Elise, then you need to make it right and be honest and open about what went wrong and fix it. And it was a frustrating lesson, but an important lesson that I'm glad I learned.
And it's kind of like they say, try not to be a person of success, be a person of value, or just the go-giver concept, always be giving. And I feel like, logistically, that was probably a nightmare. But for your customers to know that what your brand stands for is someone who's going to make it right and going to constantly give value, it's a great lesson, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank you. It's one of those things where you don't want to make mistakes. But when you do, I think you can't give up, right? So you have to keep it going, and hopefully more people stuck around. So that was good.
Awesome. So obviously you're good at a lot of things in your businesses, but if you had to tell us that one thing that you're really, really good at, and you were to teach a college course on entrepreneurship, what would you teach about, and can you give us a little mini lesson?
Okay. I think that one of my strengths is I'm good at recognizing what are viable ideas and what are garbage ideas. And so I would love to teach, if I was going to teach class, it would kind of be about that. You come in with your 5 ideas, and let's talk about, well, first of all, 5 ideas is too many. You need 1 idea. And so let's talk about how to get that one realized. And so what I tend to be pretty practical. I don't consider myself much of a shoot for the moon. I'm more like, what can we actually do? And so I like to think things through, from a logistics, can this be manufactured? Can this be easily shipped? Is there a decent margin on this? Will people pay this? All those things. I tend to think those through really quickly, and then only follow through on the ideas that seem like they're going to have the most chance at success.
Yeah, that's really great. And so you're quick to identify what will work and what won't, and just move forward with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a study about successful entrepreneurs, or I think it was millionaires, and a couple of things they had in common was, one, they had a morning ritual and had habits for success. in their life. And then the second was that they made quick decisions and they moved forward with them. And if they needed to veer eventually, they went another direction. But I feel like it's just being quick to act and then quick to follow through and not flip-flop all the time.
Yeah, I love that. And I've learned for myself, you know, if I'm struggling and if I'm really waffling back and forth and I can't make a decision, that usually means that it's a no. Or that usually means I'm just not ready. Because my nature is pretty decently quick, if I'm waffling, it's just not the right fit. And that's a good lesson for me. I also like to say, like, when I'm making a decision, it's like, if I decide to do this, am I going to sleep okay tonight? And if I'm not, like, if I know I'm going to be up tossing and turning, you know, worrying, not like cool, good anxiety, but like awful anxiety, then it's a no. It's got to be a no. And so that's kind of helped me make decisions too.
That's great. So what has been, what is your overarching marketing plan specifically, I guess, for Get to Workbook, and kind of what's been something that has worked really well for you in the past?
I use Instagram as my main marketing tool for Get to Workbook, and I have my feeds are separate, right? So I have an Elise Joy feed, and that's like my personal life where I talk about, you know, the girls and my life and food, as well as sometimes the business, you know. But then I have the at Get to Workbook feed that is 100% the book. And I use that feed to promote new product and, you know, what else is coming down the pipe. But it's also, because the book is so visual and so easy to take photographs of, like it's like such a lay flat thing. And then because everyone has their own spin on how they use it or the pens they use or how much they decorate it or don't decorate or whatever, it makes for a really easy thing to share. So I can share 100 pictures of Get to Workbook and they don't look the exact same because everyone puts their own spin on it. So having a visual platform for it is really successful. And I'm very active promoting the hashtag. Like when you get the book in the mail, the tape, like right on the packaging, it says, you know, Get to Work, and it has the hashtag in there. There's a little thank you card that says that I'd love you to share, you know, using the hashtag. And then customers seem willing to share. And then I share the customers' photos, and then hopefully they get traffic and I get traffic, and we all tend to benefit, or it seems like. So that's my favorite thing to use.
Totally. So what do you see has been the main benefit? I know you said you split your brand early on and you have your Get to Workbook and then your personal brand. But what do you think has been the main benefit to doing that?
I think it helps me not feel like I'm overwhelming people with one or the other. Like I figure if you follow my personal feed, you're interested in personal photos. If you follow Get to Workbook, you're interested in Get to Workbook. So I don't feel any like, am I doing too much personal? Am I doing too much business? I'm just like, here's all the business, here's all the personal. And that, so just for me to kind of relax into it, that's helped. I don't like the idea of sharing other people's photos on my personal feed. So I love that on the Get to Workbook feed, I get to really promote customers' photos and do a lot of regramming. And that feels very comfortable. And it makes sense, I think, there. Whereas on my own feed, it'd be kind of random if I was posting other people's pictures.
Totally. And I like love this conversation because I feel like talking about Instagram, of course, is all the rage right now, as it has been for years. But people are really talking about, as a brand, how much personal stuff should you show? And a lot of people say, you know, clients love following the behind the scenes and love seeing the person behind the brand. But I feel like I love what you're saying because it's kind of like the 80-20 principle for life in general. Like, you know, usually when you cut things out and you focus and focus and focus, things explode more. And so I'm even thinking with Free Babes, I know people like to see my kids and myself and Bo's and kids going through the forest. But if I pruned it down even more, when new people landed on my page, they would know exactly if they want to follow me or not, and they'd be more loyal customers. And like we talked about earlier, if they really want to see me, they'll follow my personal one as well. So
Right. Yeah, you know, and it goes, like, I think that people do like the behind the scenes. And so even on the Get to Workbook feed, I'll still, like, I leased a warehouse this past spring. And so I share pictures of the warehouse, and I share the excitement about that, you know, and I am careful. I never say we. Like, Get to Workbook is not we, it's me. There's one person. And so I don't pretend that I'm some big, huge, you know, corporation, because I'm not. And so I think you can still keep a business brand authentic to yourself, and you can still weave in you to it. But for me, it has been helpful, and I've seen the growth of the Get to Workbook feed has been so much faster than my personal brand growth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing because I'm not trying to sell me or my brand. I'm trying to sell Get to Workbook. And so I would love it if the Get to Workbook feed explodes and kind of leaves me in the dust. That's okay.
Yeah, no,
that's good.
That's awesome. That's a really, really good point, and I think leaves us all with something to think about with Instagram. So for you, I know you have a background in business and you learned about marketing when you were going to college, but nowadays, with what's applicable to your business now, where do you go for business inspiration or advice?
Yeah, I lucked out that when I was blogging so long ago, it was a much smaller field, or it felt smaller. And so people who were blogging, somehow it was easier. It felt easier at the time to make connections, even though that's not true. It's very easy to make connections now. But I lucked out in that I met some really great friends who do similar things. And so I don't mean similar like they don't sell planners, but they they sell online and they understand like social media and all that. And so when I'm kind of stuck or I'm having trouble or I'm worried about something, I do just shoot a text or I send an email to get advice from those women. And so I think having some friends who kind of get it, whatever they do, that's so important and valuable to just kind of get feedback. Probably some of my favorite business books. I love The Creative Habit. It's not super business focused, but it was really enjoyable as a great read. The book Essentialism is amazing, and I read that this summer before I quit my blog, and I think that it helped me realize I was putting my energy like all these areas, and I really only want to put my energy into one bigger area or one smaller area. That was really helpful. And then I read the book Craft Inc. like super long ago when I was selling on Etsy. And that was probably a really good like how-to at the time to kind of get things rolling.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to link all three of these books in the notes. So if you were to take one entrepreneur that you admire to coffee, who would it be?
I would bring Amy Poehler. And she's not like the most traditional entrepreneur, but I really enjoyed her book as well. Yes, Please is awesome. And I loved her thoughts on motherhood and, work and, working hard as a woman and when you fight for it and when you don't. And all of those concepts were so great. And I think she's interesting. I think she'd be amazing to chat with and find out, what didn't make the book. And get some of that insight.
Awesome. So, Elise, what do you see is in store for you in the next 5 years, and what are you most excited about on the horizon?
Very exciting. I think that question is so overwhelming because if I think back 5 years, I would have never thought, oh yeah, I'll be here. So it's cool to think that things could change just as dramatically in 5 years. I would love to still be doing Get to Workbook. It's the first brand and first thing I've really connected with in a way that I'm like, oh yeah, that I could see this being forever. I could see this being my lifetime business. That's never happened before. And so that's very exciting of a place to be. I think I would love to write a book, like a real book, like a page through, that kind of talks about, some of the things I've learned about work and goal setting and all of that stuff. So if things go right, I'll have a proposal together this summer. So that would be amazing if in 5 years I had a book on the shelf. What else? I think I want to keep growing Get to Workbook in a way that feels authentic. I'm not out to have thousands and thousands of different products, but I would love to have some that really make sense for the brand and hopefully meet the needs of different customers. So we'll see how things go.
Awesome. And you said something at the beginning there that I just want to touch on. What about Get to Workbook makes it so that it's your thing?
Great question. I think everything that I've done, I love making things, but the goal setting part, like the creative challenge part, the organization part, that feels like I'm not an expert in it, but that feels like that's my real strength. Whereas everything else has felt kind of like a hobby that I was lucky enough to turn into money. This to me just feels like my job. Like this feels like more of what I was meant to do and something that I could see myself wanting to invest the time in and wanting to really learn about and become an expert in. It interests me and excites me in a different way. And it feels like something that is connecting with a large enough community that it's sustainable. You never know, like the planner, I anticipate the planner bubble will burst. But I anticipate just kind of staying on anyway when it bursts. So we'll see.
Yeah, and there's an element to Get to Workbook that's, I think, truly helping people, right? You must find a lot of satisfaction knowing you're helping other people achieve their goals in life.
Yeah, that's crazy exciting. And like I don't know what I was thinking. Like I wasn't thinking that people would, I was of course hopeful that people would use the planner. But I wasn't thinking that people would engage with it so much or that they'd be so willing to share it. I mean, and that's been extremely exciting. Like going on Instagram and seeing people using the hashtag and seeing people use the book has been so different. And I guess it's because I've never really sold a product that you kind of used in that way. You know, like if you sell an art print, they hang it on their wall, but they don't like engage with it. So it's a different product field in general, and that has been really cool.
So if you were to give us all some parting advice, whether to all the women out there just starting up with their businesses or yourself 10 years ago, what would you say?
Good question. My biggest thing is keep showing up. Like I think what I've learned, you know, doing this so long, like you have, like things go really right sometimes, but most days you're just doing it. Like you're just continuing to work really hard. And the number one thing that I did that continued to lead from thing to thing to thing is I would set like creative challenges. They'd be tiny, like decorate a little playing card, or they'd be massive, like make 29. And I would really work on just doing them over and over and over again. And I wasn't thinking like, oh, this will turn into this or this will turn into this. I was just thinking, I have to keep doing this. And so those creative challenges really helped me a lot. Continuing to show my work and share my work, even when it wasn't my best. Like I look back on stuff from, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago, and I can't believe I put that out there. But at the same time, like, I think you have to. I think you have to keep doing it. And you realize that even when things do go great, you still have to get up the next day and keep going, So, yeah, I guess that's my advice. And yeah, work hard, encourage each other.
That's so great. So where can we find you on the internet?
Perfect. My internet home is just elisejoy.com. And that is my website that has links to all my social media sites as well as Get to Workbook and my blog, which again, I don't update, but there is so much, there's 10 years of archives. So there's a lot there if you haven't been there before. But my number one Instagram is my number one, and that's at Elise Joy. Okay, awesome. And at Get to Workbook, correct? Okay, great. Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, being transparent and just open about your journey so far. And for all of you guys listening, I hope that you learned at least one thing from Elise that you can take and incorporate into your business this week. And again, we're just so grateful for you, Elise. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.